Some secrets of the old Uncle Milton that you may know about, or maybe you don't know about it. No matter where you are on your learning curve with covert hypnosis and hypnotic metaphors, you will probably find something in this video that you haven't been using yet. And that will be a massive change into your practice, into your daily practice with your clients, or just in the way you communicate with people all day long. The very first secret tip strategy I could share with you right here is to use the name of a person, the name of the person you are interacting with, just before an embedded command. So when you want the person to be hypnotized, let's stay on very basic things for everyone to understand, including people who may be new to all of this. Get hypnotized. You start telling a story about somebody who went into a trance when you had a client 5 years ago or 2 weeks ago. You start telling about this client you had who came for a weight loss problem, and that client at some moment went into a trance. He went down and he was completely hypnotized. That would be the basic story. Now, if I get your name just before those embedded commands. So let's say your name is John. Pretty basic, I know. So I had my client coming 2 weeks ago, and he came for a weight loss problem. And at some point, John, what I did with this client is that I told him a few things that made him go into a trance. You see, John, when somebody goes into a trance, what happens to his mind is that blah, 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 blah. So when I rehearse your name, if your name is John or whatever your name is, when I rehearse your name just before or just after a very important embedded command, like be hypnotized, it is reinforcing in your unconscious mind the command, the message of right now state happening. Especially if I alter the tone of my voice, or like I mark some gesture, I mark the voice, I mark the words I said just at this moment. Those are giving cues to your unconscious mind to experience the thing I'm talking about, and not just listening in a passive mode. The second big secret or strategy or tip that can be helpful and useful was what he was doing, to pace the person's experience with a lot of universal truth. What we call, I think it was truism. A truism, when the hypnotist is enumerating many facts that cannot be refuted. You are here, you are listening to me, you are watching a video right now. There's not much your conscious mind can argue with that. It is just purely based on reality, on what's happening right now. If I start saying now you will become a master hypnotist just after using that, there might be some conflicts. You may be like, oh well, no, I'm not really good enough. But if I just talk about, right now you are listening to some things will click in your mind, and some things I say may be completely irrelevant. That's something you will hardly ever argue with. So one thing Milton Erickson was doing a lot during his hypnotic stories was to start by enumerating a lot of facts, either about the client's life, when he knew enough about the client, or just universal truisms about the world in general. The weather is changing outside, Johnny. Sometimes it is winter and sometimes it is summer. And when it is summer, people go outside. And when they go outside, they don't want to get back in anymore. And those, go outside, get back in may also be metaphoric terms for getting outside of your head, back into your thoughts. Stuff like that. This is a bit more advanced here, but just enumerating like this in a story many universal truisms, things that are true anyway, it just get people into what is more commonly known in sales as the yes set. You make people unconsciously agree on yeah, even if they don't say it out loud. Their mind in the back of their head will be like So from there, when you get their mind into a yes position, a yes headspace, then whatever you say, so now you are going to find one extremely important solution, John, for your problem. Or John, I would like to speak to the other part of your mind. And when John will be able to figure out the means to this weight loss problem. So this is pretty direct here, but like the words are directly implied, and it might be more metaphoric in the way Erickson was doing it. But it is just about giving enough truisms, enough universal truth in the beginning of a story so that the mind of the listener, the mind of the client, is no longer in a defensive or in a protective mode. Because sometimes when people come into a therapy, there may be some part of their mind maybe trying to protect the limitation because it is scary to change for most people. So giving a lot of truisms like that in a story or even in general helps people to settle down, to drop down the barriers, listen to you more carefully, pay more attention, and start to be more engaged into the things you are talking about. And when you will come to the specific embedded command or suggestion you want their mind to act upon, the positive things you want them to do, so stop arguing with your loved ones and start giving them more love, embedded commands like that, the mind of the client will be much more receptive to them because you have been building a big foundation of acceptance, of, yeah, I agree with what the therapist is saying right now. They don't think about that, but their unconscious mind is grasping all the things you say and like, yeah. All the things like that. The number 3 is to use some age regression, not even in a direct way, but into an indirect way, in a non-verbal way. Pretty often Milton Erickson was enumerating stories about young childs, that he had been helping young children in therapy, or maybe even his own children sometimes, he was talking about that. And one clever thing he was doing was start talking as if he was talking to a young child. So if he was talking about this little girl, 8-year-old little girl called Sarah, who hurt her knee, and he would be saying something like, and then I told to Sarah, so how do you think you can feel better right now? Not like this, but like he would take the whole behavior of somebody talking to a child inside of the story he's telling, except that he would be looking at you when he says that. So even if in the appearance he's talking about something that happened with a child you don't even know, but that is for the conscious part of your mind who may be refuting, oh, it is not that simple for me because I'm a grown adult, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm talking about you, that is the frame. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about Sarah, this little kid. However, he's literally speaking to you and looking into your eyes as he talks like that. And how do you feel now? Is it not going better? No? Like it is exaggerated, but the point is, if you start talking like this as if you were interacting with a child, some part of the mind of the client is going to identify with that. Obviously, if and only if there is rapport. If there is no rapport, very difficult. But when you come to see a therapist, usually you already presuppose you're going to change anyway, so a lot of rapport is already established just by the client coming in the office. So if he talks like this, it is kind of age regressing, it is an age regression, but without the traditional hypnotic way of, now I'm going to count from 1 to 10, and when I will be at 10, you will regress to a part of your life where you were really young. That would be the direct way, which can work. It is just that I guess he was just playful in general, Erickson, so many times he would use those like strategies, those small tweaks, small role-playing like this, as if he was talking to a young child, whereas he's talking to you. The fact he's talking to you as a child, it means that your brain will kind of regress to an earlier state of perception where your ideas were much more open and you could be learning things faster because you were young. And this skill is still accessible somewhere in your brain, but since through school and career and where I have to go to work, we tend to shut down this natural creative aspect of ourselves we have. So when Erickson was talking to somebody as if he was a child, even if he is not directly saying it, but he's implying it through his non-verbal behavior by talking like this, and how do you feel then? Even if it is through a story, he is implying to their unconscious mind, get back now to where you were when somebody was talking to you like that. And it gets the minds of people into an earlier stage an earlier age, where they could learn new things way faster and way more easily without all those trauma, all the limited perceptions of I cannot do that, it's too complicated. Kids don't care. They just go, they just act upon what they want, and they do it, and they get results. Number 4, secret or strategy number 4, making certain words stick. Inside an entire story, Erickson was sometimes marking certain words with his voice that would connect with each other only unconsciously in the back of the head of the client. Let's take an example here. This little story. And from all the mechanics, John was one of the best. He took his hand and started to hit on the machine, so a mechanic repairing a car in a garage, for example, so that he could make it work again. And the more he hit, the more easily the car was going. Right now I have just told one story among many I could have been telling in a therapy session, and nothing really happened. Now, if we say it like that, and let's say we have a client who came into therapy because he had his hand was hurting, he had a problem, he couldn't move his hand enough anymore, and whatever, the doctors don't really have an answer. So some things need to be fixed, and maybe it is more mental, but the client doesn't know. One thing Erickson was great at was giving those hidden messages into a story through embedded commands. So for example, and from all the mechanics, John was one of the best. He took his hand and started to hit on the machine so that he could make it work again. And the more he hit, the more easily the car was going. So right here I have really exaggerated. When Erickson was doing it, it was extremely slight changes in his voice, sometimes almost impossible to perceive them by ear alone, unless you were as talented as he was. And if we just put all of those embedded commands together, mechanics of the hand work again more easily. So the suggestion, the mechanics of your hand are going to work more easily. It would be the kind of things he was slipping into his stories like that non-stop. Did all of them work? Probably not, but it was also a playful way of using hypnotic stories. It is not always just about what is the most effective. It is also about what is playful for you. Because if you are having fun as the therapist or the coach, guess what? People will spend a good time with you and they will be more motivated to change compared to a therapist who is bored, who is uninterested, who's like, oh yeah, so what happens to you? Okay, let's go through that. This is also part of that. Erickson was playful. He liked to invent new things, to do things a different way compared to most other hypnotists of his time. It was also experimentation. But this technique was pretty much used, and you have probably done it yourself if you already had clients in hypnosis, if you let your unconscious mind sometimes, if you let yourself go into a trance as you interact with your clients, probably you have done something like that already, even without really being conscious of it. And the last one, number 5, the most advanced aspect of this is what we call the nested loops. So whenever Erickson was breaking a story, not finishing it and going into another story, sometimes it was even only after 2 or 3 sessions later, because quite often he had clients or patients for an extended period of time, and he might even get a person into a deep trance, start a story, a metaphoric story, not finishing it, and only finishing the part of that story 2 or 3 sessions later. It is to prevent the conscious mind of the person to grasp too much of what has been said during the story, because as you know, if you're into hypnosis, people are not disconnected when they are in a trance, even in a deep trance. Is it possible there is amnesia? Sometimes yes, but most cases people will have conscious memory of what happened during the deep trance. So if you tell a story that is too close to their real problem, they may argue with their conscious mind with, okay, I get what the therapist has been trying to do with me, I know it's not going to work. Whereas, if they can't understand consciously what you have done with them during the trance session, it will work much better. And Erickson was a master also at literally not finishing a story in one session and finishing it later, or during the same session, or maybe starting the story, cutting it, and starting another story. And this is something Richard Bandler has been popularizing later. And he was great at just doing that. to prevent the conscious mind of people to figure out what exactly he was talking about. Actually, I am almost done with a course on nested loops. I have developed a new method, maybe not a new method of doing it, but a new method of learning it, because usually people get confused with nested loops. They never really understand how they should use it because it is so complex, or it seems so complex. It really is not when you figure out the deeper mechanics. This is a small course I will put down below whenever it is out, and you can use it if you want me to guide you to figure out how can I specifically create a hypnotic story with my clients, or in general to help people I want to help in my daily life. This will be a process where I really show you step 1, step 2, step 3, one at a time, and you can develop that skill for yourself.